Jonathan Davis is a wealth manager, an economist and wealth manager. Jonathan, morning to you.
Hi, Stephen.
What impact do you think this Irish bailout is going to have on house prices, for example, in the north?
I don't think it'll have any impact at all. The housing market in the north has been falling for a few years. It will continue falling. Let me remind your listeners that one of the reasons why the north had such a boom was because people from the south were buying investment properties in the north. Well, they've stopped doing so. They will continue to stop doing so, if that's the right way of putting it, because as we've just been hearing, Ireland is bankrupt. The Irish are bankrupt. They've got no money to make investments. So, no, house prices in the north are going to continue falling.
Falling how much?
Well, I would put it, I think Northern Ireland house prices have fallen around 35% since 2007. I can see a further 25 to 35%, I think, within reason, bearing in mind that prices in Northern Ireland at some point got even higher on an average earnings comparison basis to the south of England. That's how ridiculous house prices were in Northern Ireland. Therefore, when you have such a bubble, inevitably, as we have seen in 34 bubbles around the world in recorded economic history, they all revert to long-term trend. Thus, house prices will continue to collapse in Northern Ireland. There's no bones about that.
What is extraordinary is that this property bubble in the south continued to grow, and people kept on feeding into it. I say extraordinary, but of course that's the whole nature of a bubble. The more people that embrace it, the greater it grows.
Well, exactly. It's a mania, and people start to buy the myths that you cannot lose with ... In this case, it was property. In the past, it's been, tulips from Amsterdam, or shares in technology stocks in the 1990s, or indeed shares in the 1920s and 1930s, when we had the then biggest bust in history. The thing is, people have alluded to it in your programme already, that the banks and the politicians were in cahoots. There's been fraud left, right and centre in the Republic of Ireland. I find it remarkable that no one's been taken to justice as yet. Why are we not taking the banks why are we not prosecuting the senior guys in those banks who were lending under fraudulent terms, who were lending the same money over and over again? Why were they misreporting the values of assets within their balance sheets, and so on? And ultimately, the politicians, they encouraged it all. They were delighted to go along with the tax receipts from let's face it, the transient areas where you collect taxes, such as property taxes and capital gains taxes. Well, inevitably, when you have capital gains, unless you've somehow found the pot at the end of the rainbow, you're going to have capital losses, and those taxes are going to end. So, as one of your callers quite rightly said, the economists who are listened to are employed by the banks or the government. And I might, if I may, refer to Daniel Hannan, who is a Conservative MEP, who just wrote in one of the British newspapers a couple of days ago about the euro, and he said that Tony Blair, Michael Heseltine, in other words, people at the senior end of the major parties, they all said that Britain should get into the euro. My point being that those who were on the side of the euro were listened to. Those who were giving an alternative view were not listened to. And similarly, people like me who have been talking about these bubbles for years, it's been very difficult, not on your show, I hasten to say, but it's been very difficult for people like me to get airtime in the BBC. And that is something that the BBC needs to look at in future. Alternative views must be given airtime.
Well, yeah. You've made the point, and I'll make it. You've had plenty of time on this section of the BBC. Henry, morning to you, Henry.
Good morning. I just wanted to your producer, or whoever it may be, You was bragging a few years ago, you bought 2 or 3 houses for investments and that, when the times were good.
This is me you're talking about?
Yeah. Don't you remember? You bought a few houses.
So you're bringing this back to me now?
Yeah. Oh, no, but I'll say you're as bad as others, who was, sort of buying property when you thought it was going to go up.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what's your point? Yes. You want me to say it from the rooftops? Yes. I was as stupid as everybody else.
But
yes.
What I mean. It's greed, really, isn't it?
Then what are you doing? Gloating out of it? Gloating out of the fact that I lost money?
I'm not gloating because I'm only a dustman.
What?
I'm only a dustman. A bin man. I couldn't afford to buy a chicken hutch.
It was very hard to resist a few years ago.
No, you just said the right thing. When something's there, it's hard to resist it. It's like a kid going to the shop buying sweets, isn't it?
I can't resist those either.
Well, yeah. But,
surrounded by sweets, I can't resist them, Henry.
You go to the shop and 2 for 1.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember when I didn't have property. I remember, Jonathan Davis, I'm sure you'll want to comment on this. I remember me getting surrounded by people day in, day out saying, oh, you're mad, you can't lose. You've got to, Stephen, what are you doing? You're crazy. Are you inept? You've got to get into property.
Well, Stephen, that is exactly what was going on in the mid-2000s up until, I guess, 2007, and how often did we hear the phrase, you cannot lose with property?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, at exactly that time, I was saying, no, you can lose. You can lose with anything. And I was pointing out, and other people, this is my point, other people were also pointing out that the charts were showing that property prices were off the scale, and it could only continue if this happened, and it was extremely unlikely that it would all happen. It was more likely that a crash would occur. Unfortunately, as you've effectively just pointed out, very few of us were given the opportunity to say this in the media. It was always the mortgage brokers, it was the estate agents, it was the bankers, it was the bankers' economists, it was the politicians. They were the people who were listened to.